My cousin, Martin, came to stay with me for a few weeks. We were close, but Martin was always the reckless one, the type of person who laughed in the face of rules. I should have known better than to let him drag me into trouble, but at the time, I thought I was the one trying to drag him out of it. The weather that summer was miserable. Endless rain hammered against the windows day after day, trapping us inside like prisoners. At first we didn't mind. It was video games, snacks, and staying up too late. But after a while, the walls of my room started to feel like they were closing in. I craved fresh air, open space, something. "Come on," I told Martin one afternoon. "Let's do something outside, anything. I don't care if it's raining." He looked at me like I was insane. Why would I go outside in this? We've got games, we've got food. What else do we need? But the truth was, I needed to get out. I felt like the rain was rotting my brain. I kept pushing, kept trying to convince him that maybe walking in the storm would be fun, like some kind of adventure. He just smirked and went back to his game controller. That night, the rain stopped. For the first time in days, the air was quiet, the sky heavy with dark, drifting clouds. That's when Martin got his idea. "Hey," he said casually, "why don't we check out your dad's telescope?" At first, I thought he was joking. My dad's telescope was expensive, the kind of equipment you don't even breathe on the wrong way. It was locked away in his study, a room I wasn't even supposed to enter without permission. But Martin's grin told me he wasn't joking. "Relax, I know how to use one. I have one at home. Come on, let's take it outside." I should have said no. Every bone in my body told me to say no. But the thought of actually doing something, anything different after weeks of being stuck in my room wore me down. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Minutes later, Martin was striding out the front door with the telescope slung over his shoulder. I remember frantically running around the house, locking all the windows and doors like some paranoid ritual, my stomach twisting with guilt. What if something happened to the telescope? My dad would kill me. We walked for miles, our shoes sinking into the mud, until we found a hilltop with a view of the horizon. The clouds above were moving fast, like shadows crawling across the sky. The air smelled damp and metallic, and the silence was so thick it felt unnatural. We set up the telescope. My hand shook as I tightened the tripod, praying the legs wouldn't slip on the slick ground. I leaned forward, about to look through the lens, when Martin shoved me aside. "Me first," he said, grinning. I wanted to yell at him, but before I could, his face shifted. His grin faded into something else, something sharper, colder. "There," he whispered. "Look at that." Annoyed, I leaned into the telescope. At first, all I saw were shifting clouds in the dim outline of trees. Then my stomach lurched. It was a cemetery. Down in the valley, hidden behind an old stone wall, the gravestones jutted out like crooked teeth in the earth. There was no church, no chapel, just graves, scattered and broken, leaning against the pull of time. "Creepy, huh?" Martin said with a spark of mischief in his eyes. I pulled away from the telescope, unsettled. "Where's the church? Don't they usually have one nearby?" "Oh, there was," he replied casually. "Collapsed years ago. The graveyard's all that's left." Before I could respond, Martin did the thing that would change everything. He bolted. He ran straight down the hill toward the cemetery, his figure shrinking into the fog. "Martin, wait!" I screamed. But he didn't stop. He didn't even look back. And there I was, clutching my father's telescope like it was a lifeline, staring at the dark graveyard below. I had no idea what waited for us down there. No idea that stepping into that place would wake something that should have been left to rot in the dirt forever. I should have turned back. I should have let Martin run wild on his own, but I couldn't. My father's telescope was heavy in my hands, and all I could think about was how much trouble I'd be in if I dropped it, or worse, if I lost it. But truthfully, that wasn't the only reason I went after him.
Something about the way he sprinted into that valley unsettled me, like he wasn't just running to the cemetery, but being pulled into it. The rain-soaked mud made the hill treacherous. I slipped more than once, clutching the tripod as if my life depended on it. By the time I reached the stone wall surrounding the graveyard, my lungs burned and my heart was hammering so loud I thought the whole valley could hear it. And that's when I realized Martin wasn't there. "Martin!" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. No answer, only the rustling of leaves in the trees above, the distant trickle of water running off the stones, and the quiet creak of something shifting in the dark. I pressed my forehead against the cold stone wall, peering over into the graveyard. Rows of crooked tombstones stared back at me. Some had toppled over, cracked and worn. Others leaned heavily, names nearly erased by time. The air smelled thick, earthy, like soil that hadn't been disturbed in years. And yet, I swear I could feel it breathing, rising and falling with a rhythm that wasn't natural. "Martin!" I whispered again. This time, I heard him. His voice, faint, carried on the damp air. "In here!" Reluctantly, I stepped through a gap in the stone wall. The graveyard swallowed me instantly. The light seemed dimmer inside, shadows stretching unnaturally long across the wet grass. The silence pressed against my ears like a heavy blanket. That's when I saw him. Martin stood a few rows ahead, frozen, staring down at a small, cracked tombstone. His shoulders were tense, his body stiff, as if he had just seen something that rooted him to the spot. "Martin!" I hissed, hurrying toward him. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. Instead, he pointed at the stone. "Look at this." The letters carved into it were faint, but still visible. The name read, Alta Loon. The name sent a shiver through me. I don't know why. Maybe because it didn't sound real. It didn't sound human. I tried to laugh it off, though my voice cracked. "We came all the way down here for, what, a weird name?" Martin finally turned to look at me, and there was a strange excitement in his eyes, the kind of excitement he always had when he was about to do something reckless. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black permanent marker. "Martin," I said, my stomach sinking. "Don't!" But before I could stop him, he crouched and scrawled across the stone in thick black letters. His handwriting was bold, almost mocking. "Molly, my ex." The sound of the marker scratching across the stone made my skin crawl. I felt like the earth itself was listening, like every grave was holding its breath, waiting. "Are you insane?" I shouted. "That's someone's grave, Martin. That's not a joke." He only smirked. "What? It's just a stupid rock. No one cares." But I cared. And worse, I swear the graveyard cared. The air changed. A cold wind swept through the cemetery, colder than anything I had ever felt, colder than the rain-soaked air should have been. The trees groaned as if warning us, and just for a split second, I thought I heard something else. A whisper. So faint I couldn't make out the words, but sharp enough to make every hair on my body stand on end. I grabbed his arm. "We're leaving, now." He rolled his eyes. "Relax." But I couldn't relax. My hands were trembling. My legs felt weak. All I wanted was to get out of that graveyard. I turned and started walking quickly toward the wall, heart pounding in my chest. I don't remember making the decision to abandon the telescope. I just dropped it outside the graveyard gate in my panic. The thought of carrying it back through that cursed place made my skin crawl. By the time we made it home, my entire body ached from exhaustion. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't even look at each other. We just went to our rooms and collapsed into bed. But that night, as the darkness pressed in and the house creaked around us, I couldn't stop thinking about the grave, about the name, about that whisper. I didn't know it then, but Martin's stupid prank had just woken something patient, something angry, something that would not forgive us.
And I swear to you, I hadn't been asleep for more than an hour when it happened. One moment I was drowning in the kind of exhaustion that makes your whole body feel like lead, and the next, I was awake, heart racing, because a scream had ripped through the silence of the house. It wasn't just a normal scream. It was sharp, desperate, like someone being ripped apart. I stumbled out of bed, my legs shaking, and ran down the hall toward Martin's room. My first thought was that it was one of his stupid pranks again, that maybe he was trying to get back at me for dragging him to the cemetery. But the second I opened his door, all of that melted away. The light from the hallway spilled across his room. Martin was sitting upright in bed, his face pale and dripping with sweat. His chest was heaving, and his eyes, God, I'll never forget those eyes. They weren't just wide, they were hollow, like something had clawed the life right out of him. "What the hell happened?" I asked, flicking on the light. He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. She was here. Who? The woman from the grave. The way he said it froze me. My throat tightened, my body refusing to move. I wanted to tell him he was insane, that it was just a nightmare. But the look in his eyes, the sheer terror trembling in his voice made it impossible. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Come on, you're just dreaming. It's the graveyard messing with your head." But then I saw it. On his neck, just beneath his jawline, were red marks, thin, jagged scratches. They weren't faint either. They looked raw, angry, fresh. My stomach dropped. "Martin," I whispered. "How did that happen?" He shook his head violently. I don't know, but she was here. She was standing right next to me, Justin." I stepped closer, my legs barely holding me up. His blanket was twisted, his sheets damp with sweat. He kept darting his eyes around the room like she might still be hiding in the shadows. And the strangest part? The air in that room felt different, colder, heavy, like it was full of something I couldn't see, but could feel pressing against my skin. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just a prank. It wasn't just Martin being stupid. Something had followed us home. We stayed awake the rest of the night, or at least I tried to. Martin sat on the edge of his bed, rocking slightly, whispering to himself. I sat in the corner, every creak of the house making my skin crawl. And then, this is the part that still makes me shiver. I heard it too. A sound. Faint, but there. It wasn't a whisper exactly, not like someone talking. It was more like breathing, but wrong, raspy, wet, almost hungry. It came from the corner of the room, the darkest part where the light didn't reach. I stared into that corner until my eyes burned, but there was nothing. Just shadows. Martin's hands were trembling, clutching the marker he had used earlier like it was some kind of weapon. "She doesn't want me here," he whispered. "She's angry." I wanted to tell him to shut up, but I couldn't. My mouth was dry, my tongue like sandpaper. Because deep down, I believed him. When morning finally came, the light didn't bring relief. It only revealed how bad things had become. The scratches on his neck looked darker, almost bruised now. His eyes were red-shot, his skin pale. And me? I couldn't stop thinking about the way the air in that room had felt, about the sound I swore I heard breathing in the corner. That day, Martin tried to act normal. He laughed, he joked, but it was forced.
His hands kept twitching, his gaze flicking toward dark spaces like he expected her to leap out at any moment. I wanted to convince myself that maybe it was over, that maybe it was just one terrible night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of something much darker. Something that had been waiting for years, buried under dirt and stone. And Martin's stupid prank, his marker, had given it exactly what it needed to wake up. I didn't know it yet, but the worst was still to come.
By the next night, I was already on edge. Every sound in the house felt magnified. Every creak in the wood, every tap of the wind against the window pane. But nothing compared to the atmosphere in Martin's room. It felt poisoned. The air inside was heavy, damp, and unnaturally cold, as though the storm outside had seeped into the walls and settled there. The moment I stepped into his room that evening, goosebumps prickled up my arms. My breath came out in visible clouds, even though the rest of the house was warm. Martin sat hunched on his bed, eyes hollow, lips dry and cracked. He hadn't slept properly in days, but he refused to leave his room. He told me if he stayed in the living room or mine, she would just follow him. That phrase made my stomach turn. She would follow him. At first, I thought exhaustion was eating him alive, but then things started happening. That night, as I sat near his door trying to keep him company, I heard whispers. They didn't come from him. They slithered from the walls themselves. Low, wet voices, overlapping like a chorus of drowned people. I pressed my palms against my ears, but it didn't stop them. They weren't sounds you heard with your ears. They were sounds that crawled into your skull. Martin jerked awake with a scream. His body convulsed violently, his back arching off the mattress. His eyes rolled into the back of his head. "Martin!" I shouted, rushing to him. When I touched his shoulders, his skin was ice cold. His lips moved, but it wasn't his voice that came out. It was a rasp, low, guttural, almost inhuman. Words I couldn't understand, syllables that twisted like broken glass in my ears. I shook him hard, panicked. His head snapped back violently, and for one horrifying moment, his face changed. It wasn't his anymore. His skin looked gray, stretched tight, his mouth unnaturally wide, and his eyes empty, black hollows staring straight through me. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. He gasped, his eyes returning, tears streaming down his face. "She's inside me," he choked out. I stumbled backward, trembling so badly I thought my legs might give out. I didn't want to believe him, but the bruises forming on his chest said otherwise. Thin, bony imprints stretched across his ribs, as if skeletal hands had pressed down hard enough to crush him. The rest of the night was torture. Every time Martin tried to close his eyes, something yanked him back awake. He would jolt up, clutching his throat, gasping like he was drowning. I could only sit there, useless, watching him waste away before my eyes. At one point, he started clawing at his own skin, muttering apologies. "I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have touched her grave. She won't forgive me. She won't let go." And the terrifying thing? I believed him. Every word. The shadows in the corners of the room weren't just shadows anymore. They moved. When I wasn't looking, they stretched closer to him. Sometimes, when I glanced too quickly, I swore I saw her there, a woman-shaped silhouette, tall and thin, with her head bent at an unnatural angle. Her hair hung like dripping moss, and her eyes, God, her eyes were nothing but black hollows that seemed to bleed into the air. The house itself felt infected. Doors creaked open on their own. The smell of wet soil seeped into the hallways, and at night I heard footsteps pacing outside my room, slow and deliberate. But when I opened the door, nothing, just silence, and the faint trail of muddy prints that vanished into the floorboards. By dawn, Martin looked half dead. His skin was pale, his veins dark like ink spreading under his flesh. He sat on the edge of his bed, rocking back and forth, clutching that stupid marker in his hand like it was a weapon. I have to fix it. I have to go back. It's the only way. His voice cracked, but his eyes were sharp now, wild with desperation. Back where? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The grave, he whispered. I have to clean it. I have to beg her to forgive me. And in that moment, I knew there was no choice. The thing we woke in that graveyard wasn't going to stop, not until Martin made it right. I don't even know why I'm recording this. Maybe part of me thinks that if I leave behind a record, someone, anyone, will believe what happened. Or maybe it's just the last thing keeping me sane before she finally takes me, like she took Martin. This all started as a stupid adventure. Just two cousins, bored, dragging a telescope out of the house on a rainy night. If I had just said no, if I had just stayed inside, Martin would still be alive, and I wouldn't be counting the hours until the grave opens for me too. For days after Martin vanished, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it happen again. His face disappearing beneath the mud, the pale hand wrapping around his wrist, the way the earth swallowed him like it was hungry. But it wasn't just memory tormenting me. She followed me home. It began with whispers. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear my name being breathed across the room. Not shouted, not spoken, breathed, like icy air brushing my ear. Sometimes it was Martin's voice begging me to help him. Other times it was hers, low, hissing, promising that my time was coming. The scratching came back too, always at 3 in the morning, scratching under the bed, scratching in the walls, scratching in my chest until I felt like I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going mad until I woke up one morning with my sheets shredded, claw marks tearing through the fabric, deep gouges raked into the wooden frame of my bed. That's when I knew she wasn't just haunting me, she was waiting. I tried everything. Salt lines, prayers, burning sage, even smashing the damn telescope that led us to her grave in the first place. None of it worked. The scratching kept coming, the whispers grew louder. And then 3 nights ago, I saw her. Not in my dreams, not in the corner of my eye. I saw her standing at the foot of my bed. Her hair hung in long, wet strands, dripping mud onto the floorboards. Her skin was stretched too tight across her bones, lips cracked open in a smile that was all teeth, no warmth. And her eyes, God, her eyes were nothing but dark pits, bottomless, sucking in every flicker of light. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just lay there frozen while she leaned forward and whispered, "One more night." So here I am. Tonight is the night. The clock just struck midnight as I'm speaking this, which means I have about 3 hours until she comes for me. I keep the lights on, but it doesn't matter. Darkness bends around her. I keep the doors locked, but locks don't stop what's already inside. I've thought about running, packing a bag, leaving this house, leaving this town, but deep down I know it wouldn't help. Graves don't care about distance. You can't run from the earth. You can't run from what's buried. The truth is, I don't think she wants me to run. I think she wants me to stay, to suffer, to know exactly when the end is coming and be powerless to stop it.
My hands won't stop shaking as I record this. I keep looking over my shoulder, waiting for the lights to flicker, waiting for the temperature to drop, waiting to hear that sickening sound of nails dragging across the floor. And then I'll hear the soil shift. The earth will open again just like it did for Martin. I can already feel it beneath my feet, soft, restless, like it's alive, like it's waiting to pull me down into the dark. If anyone ever finds this recording, don't go near that graveyard. Don't look for the collapsed church. Don't touch her grave, because once you disturb her rest, she doesn't forgive.